It starts, this wider world our greater movements gives. So this wider world, this is the world of greater life, which Sri Aurobindo is describing now. This wider world our greater movements gives. Its strong formations build our growing selves. Its creatures are our brighter replicas, complete the types we only initiate, and are securely what we strive to be. As if thought out eternal characters, entire, not pulled as we by contrary tides. They follow the unseen leader in the heart. Their lives obey the inner nature's law. There is kept grandeur's store, the hero's mold. The soul is the watchful builder of its fate. None is a spirit indifferent and inert. They choose their side. They see the God they adore. A battle is joined between the true and false. A pilgrimage sets out to the divine light. For even ignorance there aspires to know and shines with the luster of a distant star. There is a knowledge in the heart of sleep, and nature comes to them as a conscious force. An ideal is their leader and their king, aspiring to the monarchy of the sun. They call in truth for their high government. Hold her incarnate in their daily acts and fill their thoughts with her inspired voice and shape their lives into her breathing form, till in her sun-gold Godhead they too share. Or to the truth of darkness they subscribe. Whether for heaven or hell, they must wage war. Warriors of good, they serve a shining cause, or are evil soldiers in the pay of sin. For evil and good an equal tenure keep, wherever knowledge is ignorance's twin. All powers of life towards their Godhead tend, in the wideness and the daring of that air. Each builds its temple and expands its cult, and sin too there is a divinity. Affirming the beauty and splendor of her law, she claims life as her natural domain, assumes the world's throne, or dons the papal robe. Her worshippers proclaim her sacred right. A red tiara'd falsehood they revere, worship the shadow of a crooked god, admit the black idea that twists the brain, or lie with the harlot power that slays the soul. A mastering virtue statuesques the pose, or a titan passion goads to a proud unrest. At wisdom's altar they are kings and priests, or their life a sacrifice to an idol of power. Or beauty shines on them like a wandering star, too far to reach, passionate, they follow her light. In art and life, they catch the all-beautiful's ray and make the world their radiant treasure house. Even common figures are with marvel robed. A charm and greatness locked in every hour awakes the joy which sleeps in all things made. A mighty victory or a mighty fall, a throne in heaven or a pit in hell. The dual energy they have justified and marked their souls with her tremendous seal. Whatever fate may do to them, they have earned. Something they have done, something they have been. They live. This is an interesting description of the beings of the greater life world. In the previous canto, we read about the little life, and there were many small beings, some of them very mean and mischievous and nasty, doing all kinds of tricks. Here in this greater life, the beings are of a different kind, and they influence our world accordingly. That world, that wider world, gives our world its greater movements. There are beings in our world, human beings, who have that element of greatness in them, whether it's greatness for good or greatness for destruction. You'll start, Dhanalakshmi.
This wider world, our greater moments, gives. Its strong formations build our growing selves. Its creatures are our brighter replicas. Complete the types we only initiate and are securely what we strive to be.
So the strong formations of that world build us as we grow greater and stronger. No? The creatures of that world are like us. They are like bright copies, replicas of us. No? And they are more complete than we are. We live in a mixed world, and there's many different sides to our characters. But there, these are complete types. We are reading now about the worlds of the world stare, and each of them is like a typal world, and the beings who inhabit it are types. So these types in the greater life worlds, they have very strong characters which stand out. No? They complete the types. We only initiate. We might have some elements of these strong characteristics, but those aren't permanent. They're not fully established in us. But those beings, they are securely what we strive to be, what we make an effort to become.
As if thought out eternal great characters, entire, not pulled as we by contrary tides. They follow the unseen leader in the heart. Their lives obey the inner nature's law.
So they are not like us, mixed characters pulled in different directions at different times. No? It's as if they've been thought out by a dramatist or a poet, complete in every detail. No? As if thought out, eternal characters, entire, completely whole, not pulled the way we are pulled this way and that way by different influences. Contrary tides, like the sea flows in one direction and then it moves in another way. He says these beings of the greater world, they follow the unseen leader in the heart. Their lives obey the inner nature's law. So they're not influenced on the surface, they are following some strong leader, which is their particular character, their particular type.
But this is not the psychic being.
This is not the psychic being. Joel.
There is kept grandeur store, the hero's mold. The soul is the watchful builder of its fate. None is a spirit indifferent and inert. They choose their side. They see the God they adore.
So grandeur. This is a special characteristic which we don't see so much in human beings and which we certainly don't value as it used to be valued. Nowadays we seem to want everybody to be more or less like the common man. But these powerful characters, heroes even, the mold of the hero, he says, comes from that world. And there in that world, it's like the soul is the watchful builder of its fate. It's conscious, it follows those inner indications. None of them is a spirit indifferent and inert. Doesn't care really. They have strong characters. And they choose their side. They see the God they adore. There are different possibilities of great models that they can worship. But they choose which one they're following, and then they are loyal and go on following that. Ganga Lakshmi.
The battle is joined between the true and false. The pilgrimage seeks out to the divine light. For even ignorance, they aspire to know, and shines with the lust of the distant star. There is a knowledge in the heart of sea, and nature comes to them as a conscious force.
So because of choosing their sides, there in that world, there's a battle. There's a battle between the true and the false. You choose one or the other. Or also in a kind of heroic spirit, you set out on a pilgrimage to the divine light, however far and distant and difficult that may be. This happens in that world because there, even ignorance, there's ignorance in that world, but it aspires to know. It's aspiring to a higher form of itself. So even the ignorance has some light, shines with the luster of a distant star, a very, very faint, far away star, but there's some aspiration in it to become greater. In that world, even in the heart of sleep, there is a knowledge, a power of knowledge. And the beings of that world experience nature coming to them as a conscious force. Sarojini?
Idol is their leader and their king, aspiring to the
Monarchy
of the sun. They call in truth for their high government, hold her impregnate in their daily act, and find
fill.
their thoughts with her inspired voice, and set their lives into her breathing form. Deep in her sun hold Godhead, their true self.
Yes. So in that world, the beings take an ideal as their leader and their king. And first he describes those who aspire to the monarchy of the sun. Monarchy means a rule by one person, by a king or a queen. So this is the monarchy of the sun, the sign of the divine light and presence. So those who have taken the monarchy of the sun as their ideal, they call in truth for their high government. They want to be ruled by the divine sun of truth. They are even carrying that ideal of the sun of truth in their everyday acts, in their daily acts, and filling their thoughts with the inspired voice of truth and shaping their lives into the breathing form of truth. They are truly concentrated and consecrated and devoted to their ideal. And they go on persisting in that consecration until in the sun gold Godhead of truth, they too share. They can become part of her light. and power. That's those beings who choose the truth. But there are also other beings who are equally concentrated and committed, but they are committed to the darkness. Ahila.
When it is of good, they serve a shining case. Are evil soldiers in the way of sin? For evil until and evil taming gives. Whatever knowledge is ignorance to.
Yes. So they may dedicate themselves to truth. But there are other beings who subscribe to the truth of darkness, of falsehood. But in that world, the beings, they must choose their side. They must wage war. They must fight for what they represent, what they believe, whether it's for heaven or for hell. If they are fighting for heaven, they become warriors of good, and they serve a shining cause. But they may equally well be evil soldiers, serving the mother of falsehood. Because wherever knowledge and ignorance are twins, they are equally powerful, and one has to make a choice between one or the other.
All purpose of life towards their Godhead held in the wildness and the garden of the air. Each builds its temple and expands its cult, and sees who there is a divinity.
Yes. So all powers of life in that world tend towards their Godhead, their most divine form, in the wideness and the daring of that air. So each of them there sets up their temple, collects their worshippers, expands its cult, many worshippers, no? And in that world, it's possible for sin, for falsehood, for what separates us from the divine, to be a Godhead. And he continues how that works. Alice, would you read?
Affirming the beauty and splendor of her law, she claims life as her natural domain, assumes the world's throne, or dons the papal robe. Her worshippers proclaim her sacred right. A red tiaraed falsehood they revere. Worship the shadow of a crooked God. Admit the black idea that twists the brain, or lie with the harlot power that slays the soul.
So these are the opposites. No? Some of them consecrate themselves absolutely to the truth. But others worship the Godhead of sin. She is a divinity there. So above we had, when it said she and her, that was truth. Now it is sin. She affirms the beauty and splendor of her law. She claims life as her natural domain where she can rule. And she assumes the world's throne. She becomes the ruler of the world. Or, if she's not a secular ruler, she dons the papal robe. The Pope is the one who controls the Catholic Christian group. No? So those people who worship her, they consider her, she has a sacred right. And that leads to consequences for them. They worship, they respect, they revere a falsehood who's wearing a crown, a tiara, but it's red. It is with that red of rajas, of passion. And they worship the shadow of a crooked God. This word crooked in the Vedas means something that's not connected straight with the truth. It's twisted in some way. So her worshippers, they admit, they accept the black idea. And that's a very dangerous thing to do, because that black idea twists the brain, distorts it, and disables it. Or she unites with a harlot power of promiscuity and of sin, that power which slays the soul. So these opposites are possible in that world. We may remember that much earlier in the poem. It was described how Aswapati experienced that the kings of virtue and the kings of sin were fighting, the kings of evil and the kings of good. They were fighting to control his being and his nature. So here in this world, these are typal beings, and they choose which side they belong to, absolutely, to one side or the other.
But here this part, it talks about falsehood, sin and everything. And how can it be a greater life?
Yes, it's about greatness. It's about strength, power, life power. And the life power takes all these different forms. And we see them reflected, but in a much weaker, diminished way here in our world. But here too we see asuric beings and rajasic beings. Who's next? Kamala.
Masquerade, virtue, stage shoes, the clothes, are a titan pageant, goes to brow and wrist. Are wisdoms or third, they are kings and priests. Are their life a sacrifice to an idol of power? Our beauty shines and down like a one great star. Too far to reach, passionate, they follow and light. In art and life, they catch the all beauty's babe and make the world their radiant treasure's house. Even common figures carving the marble grow. Their charm and greatness locked in every color. Awake the joy which sleeps in all things new.
Thank you. So again, he's describing the alternatives, the opposites. Either they put on a great pose, like a grandiose statue of virtue, of righteousness, of goodness. A mastering virtue, statuesques the poles. These are beings which just represent virtue, nothing else. Or just the opposite, instead of this statuesque pose, there's this proud unrest of Titan passion, never satisfied, always uneasy, always wanting more and more. Or in the same way, they may make wisdom their ideal. They become kings and priests, worshipping wisdom. Or others worship power. They make their life a sacrifice to an idol of power, an image of power. And others dedicate themselves to beauty. Beauty shines on them like a wandering star, as if their ideal is moving and shifting around. She's too far to reach, but with passion and intensity, they follow that guiding light of beauty. They do it in art and in life. They are searching for that ray of light of the all-beautiful. And they collect rays of that light and make the world their radiant treasure house. They collected all these beautiful things. There, even common figures, just ordinary things, are robed with marvel, the marvel that beauty gives. A charm and greatness locked in every hour awakes the joy which sleeps in all things made, the delight which beauty brings. Devan.
A mighty retreat or mighty fall, a throne in heaven or pit in hell, the dual energy they have justified, and mark their souls with a tremendous seal. Whatever fate may do to them, they have earned. Something they have done, something they have been, they live.
So perhaps we can recognize something of this feeling, to have done something, whatever it is. So that completes that particular little passage. Now he starts on a new theme, Philomena. Their matter here. Line 470.
Soul's present and not its past. In a contrary balance to earth's truth of things, the past weighs less, the subtle counts for more. On inner values hangs the outer plan.
So this is another distinguishing characteristic of this world, that it's it is more inner, it is more subtle than our world. Matter is the result of soul, not the cause of soul. We tend to think that we are material beings, and we have lives and minds, and we have souls as well. But here it's the other way round, that matter can only exist as an expression of soul. There, things are in an opposite balance to the way things are in our earth. earth's truth of things. There, what is heavy for us, the gross matter, solid matter, weighs less there. And what is subtle and fine counts for more. The whole plan of that world depends on inner values. Alexander, would you read?
Yes, agree with the thought, the expressive word, as yearns the act, the passion of the soul. This world's apparent sensible design looks vibrant back to some interior mind.
Thank you. He gives the example of if an expressive word, like these lines of Sri Aurobindo, or if we find a way of expressing something true, that expressive word is somehow alive, living with the thought that has given birth to it. And an action can be very much inspired by the passion of the soul. So in that world, its obvious, surface, apparent design is looking back to its origin, to some inner power which has given rise to it, which is not the way it's normally happening in our world. Dana.
The mind, not limited by external sense, gave figures to the spirit's imponderables. The world's impacts without channels registered and turned into the body's concrete thread, the vivid workings of a bodiless force. Powers here, subliminal, that act unseen or in ambush crouch, waiting behind the wall, came out in front, uncovering their face. The occult grew there overt, the obvious kept a covert turn and shouldered the unknown. The unseen was felt and jostled visible shapes.
Yes. Our minds are dependent normally on our senses, what we register with our senses of touch and hearing and sight and so on. But there, the mind isn't limited by the outer senses. Instead, the mind can itself give figures, give forms to the spirit's imponderables, to the mysteries of the spirit, something that's imponderable. You can't properly weigh and assess it, something very mysterious. So for us, spirit is like that. It's imponderable. But there, the mind can give forms to the spirit's imponderables. And the mind there can register the world's impacts without channels. It doesn't need the channels of the nerves and the senses. It can have a direct touch with the impacts of the world. And it can turn the vivid workings of a bodiless force into the body's concrete thrill, without touching, without using the physical senses. It can feel very intensely, feel the vivid workings of a bodiless force, a force that doesn't have a material form. There are powers that act unseen here in our world, subliminal. They are below the threshold of our consciousness. We are not aware of them. Or they may be hiding, crouching, hiding in ambush, waiting behind the wall between that world and this world. Came out in front, revealing themselves. They can be seen, those subtler powers. What is hidden to us there became overt, obvious, revealed. And what was obvious still kept something secret about it, a covert turn. And it's very, very close to the unknown. The unseen was felt, jostling. You know, jostling is when you're in a crowd and you feel somebody touching your shoulder. Jostled, visible shapes. So there are many ways in which that world of greater life, it's the life force that is dominant there, not matter, not mind either. So matter and mind have to follow the lead of the life force. Shall we read just a little further? Go back to the beginning. In the communion of two meeting minds, thought looked at thought and had no need of speech. Emotion clasped emotion in two hearts. They felt each other's thrill in the flesh and nerves, or melted each in each and grew immense as when two houses burn and fire joins fire. So we have heard about experiences like this, not where there's direct contact, thoughts meet thoughts, emotions are felt directly, felt even in the flesh, and the possibility of a union of two beings in intense emotion and energy. He says it's like two houses burn and fire joins fire. So in this...
Sorry. What is two houses burn? I'm as well two houses burn and fire joins house.
There's a nice story by Tolstoy about two neighbors in a Russian village. And there was a quarrel between the housewife on this side and the housewife on that side, and it ended up with the thatched roof of one of the houses catching fire. And instead of rushing to put it out, the two housewives were so busy blaming each other that they just let not only one house but two houses burn in an immense conflagration like that. So it's something like that. If you don't put the fire out, then the fire can become greater and greater. So this is a fire of emotion, of feeling. It starts and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. More and more powerful.
Was that when it's very hot 2 months recently, I tell somebody Agni, is Agni?
Well, Agni, of course, is the purifying fire.
Exactly.
Yeah. But here, I think he's expressing this intensity of feeling, and hate is grappling with hate, fighting, and love is breaking in on love. So the love felt by one being is also experienced by the other. Will wrestled with will on the invisible ground of mind. We've heard of instances like this too, of two opponents really just facing each other with pure willpower. And then others' sensations pass through like waves. The sensations being felt by one of the beings, it will be felt by another, which would be strongly affected, left quivering the subtle body's frame. Their anger rushed, galloping in brute attack. These are really very intense experiences. A charge of trampling hooves on shaken soil. That's the anger coming, like a herd of horses. Or one felt another's grief invade the breast. I've had this experience once. I remember being close to somebody who was truly grieving, and then I felt it myself. Another's joy, exalting, ran through the blood. Hearts could draw close through distance, and voices near that spoke upon the shores of alien seas. This is the subtle hearing that can hear at a distance. Voices that spoke upon the shores of alien seas. So we can stop there for today.
Command is saved, and there is another saying, similar word, stupendous. What it is between stupendous and tremendous? Is the same meaning?
Tremendous,
Tremendous one.
and tremulous.
Stupendous.
Tremendous means enormous, very big or very powerful. And what's the other word?
Stupendous.
Stupendous. Yes, it's another word which is very similar. Stupendous, very big and very powerful.
When you explain your experience, I don't understand. Invade the grace, grief, some grief.
You don't understand?
No, I don't.
I was once at a funeral where a child had died, and the child was, everybody was mourning. Everybody was mourning, of course, everybody was sad. But as I passed through the crowd, there was one person who was really grieving, and I could feel that grief in my heart.
This wider world our greater movements gives. Its strong formations build our growing selves. Its creatures are our brighter replicas. Complete the types we only initiate, and are securely what we strive to be. As if thought out eternal characters, entire, not pulled as we by contrary tides, guides. They follow the unseen leader in the heart. Their lives obey the inner nature's law. There is kept grandeur's store, the hero's mould. The soul is the watchful builder of its fate. None is a spirit indifferent and inert. They choose their side. They see the God they adore. A battle is joined between the true and false. A pilgrimage sets out to the divine light. For even ignorance there aspires to know, and shines with the lustre of a distant star. There is a knowledge in the heart of sleep, and nature comes to them as a conscious force. An ideal is their leader and their king. Aspiring to the monarchy of the sun, they call in truth for their high government. Hold her incarnate in their daily acts, and fill their thoughts with her inspired voice, and shape their lives into her breathing form, till in her sun-gold Godhead they too share. Or to the truth of darkness they subscribe. Whether for heaven or hell they must wage war. Warriors of good, they serve a shining cause, or are evil soldiers in the pay of sin. For evil and good an equal tenure keep, wherever knowledge is ignorance's twin. All powers of life towards their Godhead tend in the wideness and the daring of that air. Each builds its temple and expands its cult. And sin too there is a divinity. Affirming the beauty and splendor of her law, she claims life as her natural domain, assumes the world's throne, or dons the papal robe. Her worshippers proclaim her sacred right, a red tiara'd falsehood they revere, worship the shadow of a crooked God, admit the black idea that twists the brain, or lie with the harlot power that slays the soul. A mastering virtue statuesques the pose, or a Titan passion goads to a proud unrest. At wisdom's altar they are kings and priests, or their life a sacrifice to an idol of power. Or beauty shines on them like a wandering star, too far to reach, passionate they follow her light. In art and life they catch the all-beautiful's ray and make the world their radiant treasure house. Even common figures are with marvel robed. A charm and greatness locked in every hour awakes the joy which sleeps in all things made. A mighty victory or a mighty fall, a throne in heaven or a pit in hell. The dual energy they have justified and marked their souls with her tremendous seal. Whatever fate may do to them, they have earned. Something they have done, something they have been, they live. Their matter is soul's result and not its cause. In a contrary balance to earth's truth of things, the gross weighs less, the subtle counts for more. On inner values hangs the outer plan. As quivers with the thought the expressive word, as yearns the act with the passion of the soul, this world's apparent sensible design looks vibrant back to some interior might. A mind not limited by external sense gave figures to the spirit's imponderables. The world's impacts without channels registered and turned into the body's concrete thrill, the vivid workings of a bodiless force. Powers here subliminal that act unseen, or in ambush crouch, waiting behind the wall, came out in front, uncovering their face. The occult grew there overt. The obvious kept a covert turn and shouldered the unknown. The unseen was felt and jostled visible shapes. In the communion of two meeting minds, thought looked at thought and had no need of speech. Emotion clasped emotion in two hearts. They felt each other's thrill in the flesh and nerves, or melted each in each and grew immense, as when two houses burn and fire joins fire. Hate grappled hate, and love broke in on love. Will wrestled with will on mind's invisible ground. Others' sensations, passing through like waves, left quivering the subtle body's frame. Their anger rushed galloping in brute attack, a charge of trampling hooves on shaken soil. One felt another's grief invade the breast. Another's joy exulting ran through the blood. Hearts could draw close through distance. Voices near that spoke upon the shore of alien seas.